Wolong Fallen Dynasty is Sekiro meets Dynasty Warriors. You are a nameless soldier fighting for the Imperial Army against a group of renegades. Slain while defending a young master, you're brought back through an ancient power. Over the course of the next 20 to 30 hours, you will fight humans, creatures, and demons to bring peace to the later Han Dynasty of China in 184 AD. Team Ninja knows combat, and Wolong made me feel like the biggest badass on the planet. It's releasing day one into Game Pass on console, cloud, and PC. So let's see if you should pick up your weapon and fight through the chaos that has befallen these three kingdoms in the XboxEra review of Wolong Fallen Dynasty. The story and characters of Wolong will be familiar to anyone that has played a game set in the Three Kingdoms era of Chinese history. The English dub is god-awful, so you want to stick with default settings and use subtitles. Character motivations change on a whim, and after not too long, I felt lost with what was going on and why. And while it's not particularly good, the story never got in the way of my enjoyment, and it is ridiculously stylish and cool the entire time. It feels like great popcorn action B-grade cinema, and you could feel the voice actors pour everything they had into that default dialogue. You are a nameless militia soldier who saves the life of a blindfolded young master, and the first thing you'll be tasked with is creating your character. It is a deep system that allows for full customization and even pronoun choice. I ended up going between the base masculine and base feminine character looks throughout my playtime, as once you've opened the hub area, you can fully customize your character's appearance whenever you want. This is a Team Ninja game, so of course the feminine body type can have some enormous breasts, which jiggle like a pair of water balloons taped to a wall whenever you have even the slightest movement. Oaths are a huge part of the game's story and progression. Early on, you'll make one with said young master, and the swearing never stops. You will constantly meet, fight alongside, and then swear oaths with many of the period's biggest mythological figures. Each has a divine beast associated with them, and you'll be empowered with various super moves thanks to these newfound connections. Genuine and demonic ki are the driving forces of all things living and undead, and it is both a major plot point and your Dark Souls-style leveling currency, which we'll get into later. This is a big game with a lot to do, so let's get into the battlefield system. Every mission in Wolong Fallen Dynasty has two types of structure. The main battlefield type finds you starting in point A and slowly winding your way towards point B, where the first half of the battlefield boss awaits. This then repeats until you reach the end of the level boss at point C. You will find two types of banners along the way to the boss. The first is the bonfire equivalent and is known as the battle flag. These are your checkpoint, leveling, battle setup, and fast travel hubs. The second is known as the marking flag, and its job is to up your fortitude. The fortitude system is a per-battlefield leveling curve that is tied to the morale system. It all sounds complicated, but in practice it ends up being pretty basic to understand and enjoyable. Morale takes the place of enemy types having levels assigned to them. This is a per-battlefield number that hovers above each enemy type. It starts at 0 and can go as high as 20 for enemies and 25 for yourself. As you progress through a stage, every hit and enemy kill will add to your morale meter, which always starts at 0 on a new battlefield. Every enemy can and will do critical blows, which are denoted by a massive red glow behind their upcoming attack. If this strike hits you, you will lose 1 meter of your morale. Fortitude ups the base level that your morale can drop down to. Every battle flag adds 2 levels of fortitude, and every marking flag adds 1. By the end of each level, if you found every flag, your base morale will be 20, which matches the base morale of each end-of-level boss. The other type of battlefield is the challenge-style sub-battlefield. These are intense, difficult, and short battlefields where your objective is to survive one or more waves of enemies. Some of the later sub-battlefields have a few battle or marking flags to find, but they're rarely longer than 10 to 15 minutes and offer up large hits of experience and high-quality rewards for your effort. A lot of the combat is tied to the morale system and how it affects both you and enemies, which we'll hit up in a bit. The most that can be said about the game's mission structure is that it is damned repetitive, but it never bothered me because the combat and level design were excellent. Most levels are straightforward in their main path, with a few being maze-like at times. All of them have multiple side paths to find, with hidden things like drops and marking flag locations. This is more of a loot game than its biggest influence, Sekiro. Loot itself has both a rarity and a rating system. There are common, rare, epic, and legendary rarities, alongside a 1 to 4 star rating system. The higher each one is, the more randomized perks it comes with alongside its max potential damage or defense stat. There is a lot of loot in Wo Long, and it felt overwhelming at times. Early on though, you'll meet and unlock a blacksmith at your hub, who is extremely important because the main way to raise your damage is by upgrading your preferred weapons through her. By the end of my playthrough, I had a full +9 setup for all my gear, and it made the game a hell of a lot easier if I made sure to keep upgrading as soon as possible. To do this, you can use your battle flags to travel between battlefields whenever you wish. This is also where you'll spend your genuine key to level up your 5 different stats. Each is themed after a part of nature and ties into an element. I mainly focused on wood, which was weapon damage and mostly health. It is tied to the lightning element, and it gives you defense against metal. There are also earth, water, and fire. Each adds different stats or helps with various combat systems, while offering up elemental damage protection against its rival. Genuine key is gained whenever an enemy is slain or you use an item found as world drops or in chests. It is very Souls-like, except that if you fall in combat, you only lose half of your genuine key. Instead of having to find it floating above the ground, you'll need to kill the enemy that finished you off last time, and they will have a temporary morale boost for having taken you down. You are also never locked into a spec, as you can change all of your points for no cost whenever you want at the game's hub once it is available to you. It's a system that respects your time more than the Souls games do, and hey, you even can pause. Hitting menu alone won't do it, but once you hit menu, you can then do a quick press of the view button, which will put the game into a full pause if you're playing solo. And bosses killing you multiple times in a row doesn't mean you lose all your ki over and over again, as restarting the fight will just immediately give it back to you. It made dying feel like learning without all the needless time wasting that other games in the Souls style have leaned into. I could spend time learning a fight without constantly worrying about some debuff or needing to grind things out to proceed. My skill ended up being the main thing as long as I kept up with the very easy gear upgrade system, because this game's combat is, outside of one fight, really well balanced and leans into the power fantasy in a glorious way. Wo Long's combat system is not nearly as complicated as Neo's. X is your main attack, with Y being your per weapon spirit move. These are big attacks that add to the enemy's spirit gauge on a successful hit. The spirit is the main thing that matters in Wo Long, as once that meter is full for either you or the enemy, the damage that can be dealt skyrockets. The key to defeating every enemy in the game as quickly as possible is figuring out how to break their spirit gauge and putting them into a vulnerable state as quickly as you can. Once they are stunned, pressing Y while in melee range will cause you to go into a ridiculously cool looking finisher animation that deals enormous damage. Spirit is also used to power your martial arts and wizardry spells. Martial arts are on the right bumper and vary per weapon type. My preferred double sword combo had a right bumper plus Y ability that caused massive spirit damage while only raising my own spirit gauge slightly. I ended up using it to end every combo I could find, and I found myself doing XXXY RB plus Y dance that destroyed everything in my path. To complement this never-ending barrage of melee hits are 3 different ranged weapon types that are tied to the water tree for damage. You will come across various bows, crossbows, and repeating crossbows. Each of them has pretty limited ammo and can deal massive damage on headshots if you're spec'd into it. I mostly use them to pull enemy mobs away from others to focus on a 1v1 fight, or the more common 2v1 and 3v1 varieties, which we'll get into in a minute. Wizardry spells are magical abilities which cause your spirit gauge to fill very quickly when you use them. I found most of the offensive ones to just be far too weak to bother with unless I fully spec'd into them, which then made my sword too weak. So I was stuck using spells that mainly buffed my character and companions. Wolong is an up to 3-player co-op title, and those 2 helpers can be either people or NPCs. Throughout the story, you will meet various historical warriors of the time who almost always accompany you on the battlefield. Using an in-game currency, you can choose to call in friends for help online or extra NPCs whenever you're at a battle flag. These NPC helpers were key to helping me defeat the more difficult bosses, and it kept the frustration down when every enemy wasn't constantly attacking me. You have time to breathe, recuperate, and plan your next move in a way that rarely happens in a Souls title. The most important button in the game is B, which, when pressed just before an attack lands, will parry. Parrying enemy critical blows is the only way you can beat Wolong without massively overleveling every fight. Thankfully, parrying does have a generous timer, and I rarely felt cheated by it. Double tapping B will cause you to do a jumping dodge, which is useful but adds to your spirit meter. If that spirit meter is full and you get hit, you will be temporarily stunned, often leading to massive amounts of incoming damage. You can block by using left bumper, but I found myself almost never using it. Parrying was far more beneficial, and learning to time it for every enemy attack helped far more than blocking ever did. A is for jumping, and you'll have a double jump by default. Holding A on white painted walls allows you to climb and flip up them and is the main style of platforming. And there is no swimming, so if you see water, do not fall into it. You will be left at 0 HP and forced to drink a Dragon Pot Elixir by pressing up on the D-pad immediately to stay alive. Those pots are straight Estus Flask equivalents, and you'll find dragon crystals to upgrade the number of them you can use and how much HP they can replenish. There are a ton of consumables that you can map to your quick use inventory. Those can be swapped between using left and right on the D-pad. There is also a rallying system for your NPC and co-op partners where you can spend all your spirit gauge to give them buffs by holding right bumper and pressing either up or down on the D-pad. This game does have a lot of different systems, but it does an excellent job of slowly introducing you to them. And I'm sorry if this review has been a lot, but just know that the levels are easy to understand and progress through. Combat feels fantastic, and outside of one boss fight is very well balanced. That one boss fight may get nerfed by a day 1 patch or shortly after launch. If not, you will all know what I'm talking about a few days after the game comes out. I hope none of you feel my and so many other early players' pain, because the constant changing of attack speed, combo style, and the ridiculous damage output of this very famous mythological figure was not fun. What was fun though, was looking at all the action going on, at least on console. Wolong has 2 different graphical modes, and neither aims for 30 frames per second. First up is Resolution, which aims for 60 while maintaining a higher overall image quality and level of detail setting than the other mode. That mode is Performance, of course, which aims for a locked 60 FPS while sacrificing some settings. When not capturing footage, I play it on a 1440p monitor in its 120Hz mode. The Performance mode on this VRR-enabled display felt better than 60 FPS most of the time, but with it not being a shooter, I'm not sure if it was actually going above 60 or not. In either mode, I think Wolong looks fantastic. It's a clean, colorful game with a killer art style. Everyone looks cool as hell, and while the enemy variety may not be the highest, the models are high quality. The scope of each level is pretty small in its playable area, though the team does a great job of hiding this well with excellent background art. Performance felt stable for me most of the time, with the biggest issue I had with the game coming in the form of random 1 second long hitches that occurred kinda often. Thankfully, they rarely happened during boss fights, but they did happen a lot. Dozens of times, the games would stutter for a second as the game completely hitched and skipped 60 or more frames of animation. It didn't cost me health or fights often, if at all, but I hope it's something they patch out as quickly as possible. And I only had a night or 2 of PC access before writing this review, and that version was real rough. Playing through the Windows Store, the frame rate struggled mightily on my 5800X and 6700 XT AMD rig, hovering in the mid-40s quite often at max settings. Constant stutter made the game nearly unplayable anyways, and I had to lower the settings so far to get a locked feeling 60 that it ended up looking a bit worse than the Series X version. Audio-wise, though, the game is stellar as long as you're not using the English dub, which stinks. The writing is solid as the default voice actors give it their all in the cutscenes. Sound effects are clear and help you know if you've been spotted or if you're parried correctly. The music is one of the best parts of Wo Long, and I found myself humming along to all the variations of the main menu theme that cropped up throughout the story. And when the music from last June's showcase trailer hit, late in the game, the hair on the back of my neck stood up the entire time. It is an epic and gorgeous soundtrack that helps carry a solid if confusing story to an epic conclusion. I only really ran into one bug, the biggest one being crashing. One occurred right after a long boss fight, but I lucked out and I kept my progress. I know a few others playing the title early that had it crash on them quite a bit, leading to lost progression. You never know if or when day 1 or week 1 patches will hit, and as I write this on the Sunday before launch, which is nearly a full week out, I'm unsure of their launch plans. Wrapping things up, Wo Long Fallen Dynasty is an epic ass-kicking time, featuring ridiculously cool characters, stunning music, and a deeply engaging combat system. This one is an easy recommendation for either purchase or just downloading on Game Pass. Team Ninja and Koei Tecmo have a winner on their hands with this new franchise, and I cannot wait to see more from it in the future.